He was one of the only companions, or perhaps the only companion ever to have met two of the kings of his time who were not the most just of people, to have met them and to have lived to tell the tale. The first king that he met was the king of kings of the time, as he so called himself, Kisra. Now we all know that every Persian king was called Kisra, just like every Roman king was called Caesar, and so on and so forth, and every Habashan king was called Al-Najashi. So he went to meet Al-Kisra because the Prophet ﷺ was at a time in his message where he was sending messages out not just to the common people and to people like himself in the Arabian Peninsula, but he was going further and reaching to more higher levels in society. So he wanted to send a letter to Kisra, and he asked his companions, who amongst you wishes to take this letter to him? And the first hand that went up and the first man that stood up was Abdullah ibn Hudhafah. So the Prophet ﷺ gave him this letter and entrusted it to him to take to Kisra. So he got ready, all on his own, and rode Persia. Now, anybody who has an idea of geography knows the distance between Medina and what is modern day Iran now. And travelling by plane or by car is a chore and a half. But this man, he did it by horse, on horseback. And not only that, he did it on his own. And that was because of the iman that he had, that the message that he was propagating was the message of truth, and that message of truth needs to reach far and wide, needs to reach everybody. So when he reached the borders of Persia and the borders of the empire that was the Persian Empire at the time, he requested to enter, and they allowed him. He's just a Bedouin wearing cloaks that are dusty and torn. He doesn't look like a threat. So he came in and he asked for an audience with Kisra. And when asked why, he said that I have a letter from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Messenger of Allah. Now at that time, rumors had spread far and wide of this man called Muhammad, and this message that he was propagating, and the threat that he posed to the surrounding areas. So Kisra was intrigued. Normally he wouldn't allow such a person of low status to enter into his chamber and speak to him on a personal level, but he allowed him. So Abdullah ibn Hudhafah entered, and Kisra got his Iwan ready, and he wore his cloaks and jewelry and got ready, and brought his wuzara, his ministers, with him as well, and his advisors. And they sat, and Abdullah ibn Hudhafah walked in. And you see the contrasting appearances of the two men. You have Kisra, who is a king, wearing or decked out in such decadence and such jewelry that I don't think money could even buy today. And Abdullah ibn Hudhafah, who is wearing his travel cloak and not caring about the outward appearance of a person, but worried more about the message that he's sending. So he enters upon Kisra and meets him, and he has a letter in his hand. So the ministers of Kisra go forth to take the letter off him, and he says no. The Prophet ﷺ entrusted me with this letter to give to Kisra, and I will not alleviate myself from this burden except that I hand this letter to Kisra himself. So they allowed him. What harm can it do? And they were more curious about what was in the letter than who gives the letter himself. So Kisra took the letter, he opened it up and read the first line, and it said, Min Muhammad Rasulullah ila Kisra Azim al-Furs. Kisra read this mere sentence, and that was enough for him to take the letter, rip it up, and throw it in the face of Abdullah ibn Hudhafah. The wuzara shocked. Abdullah ibn Hudhafah, calm, cool, collected. Kisra is at this point on fire with anger. And he says to Abdullah, this man, this Muhammad, yesterday was a servant of mine. Yesterday was a slave. Yesterday was my subject. And he has the audacity today to send me, Malik al-Muluk, the King of Kings, a letter starting with his name and not my name. So Abdullah ibn Hudhafah doesn't say nothing. Doesn't say anything. Keeps quiet. Looks at him. And at this point, Kisra is angry to the point of violence. He's screaming, shouting, screaming at his wuzara, screaming at his ministers. The ministers are in confusion. What should they do? Should they punish this Abdullah ibn Hudhafah? He is just a messenger. You don't kill the messenger. So they forced him out and they put him into a room away while Kisra alleviates his anger and calms down a bit. While Abdullah ibn Hudhafah was in this room, he was thinking, okay, what's going to happen to me now? All I did was hand a letter to him, and I'm now on the brink of destruction. They may murder me, they may kill me. So he sat for a short while, and he pondered over the situation, and he finally said to himself, you know what? I don't really care. Kisra can do what he wants. He can either accept the letter, he can, whatever decision he wants to make, he can make. I have done my duty. The Prophet ﷺ asked me to give this letter to Kisra. I have done that. My job is done. So he opened the door, left, jumped on his horse, and rode home. So in the time it took for Kisra to calm down, which wasn't a short while, they sent for Abdullah ibn Hudhafah to come again. Perhaps they had some questions to ask, some queries. But by the time they got to his room, opened the door, they realized that he'd left. So they sent out scouts to follow him. And they found his trail, so they followed his footsteps all the way to the borders of Persia. And by that time, Abdullah ibn Hudhafah had left. So Kisra sends a letter to a man called Badhan. Badhan was a Persian man, who lived in Yemen, and he was the self-acclaimed king of Yemen, and he was a subject of Kisra. So Kisra had like a proxy state in Yemen. He was running things, even though Yemen was full of Arabs, but Persians were running things at that time. So he sent a letter to this man Badhan, and he said to him, send 2 of your strongest men and your most able men, like secret services, and go and take Muhammad and bring him to me. So Badhan looks at this letter. He doesn't know what's happened, doesn't know what's going on, doesn't know the situation, but he knows of Muhammad and he knows of his message, and he knows what's going on in Mecca and Medina. So he says, okay, this is interesting. Kisra wants to get involved in the fight. So he sends 2 of his men up to Medina. 2 burly men. They know like martial arts and stuff. Really strong. They go up and they reach a place called a Ta'if. They enter into a Ta'if and they ask about this man Muhammad. Where is Muhammad? Do you know where he is? Where can we find him? So these men happen to be from Quraysh. And they said, you will find Muhammad in Yathrib, in Medina. So they leave and go to Medina. Now these traders from Quraysh, they went back to Mecca. And they started to spread the rumor that men from Persia have come to take the Prophet ﷺ. So even though we are struggling with his message, even though we are struggling, to keep up with this man, someone else is going to take care of him for you. So the 2 men, they reach Medina and they asked for the Prophet ﷺ and they find him. They go up to him and say to him, verily, the King of Kings has sent us to you to bring you back to him, to take you to him for accountability. The Prophet ﷺ looked at them and said, my companion Abdullah recently visited your King of Kings, and he told me what he did. He told me that he ripped up my letter. So the Prophet ﷺ said to them, مَزَّقَ اللَّهُ مُلْكَ, that verily Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tear up his empire. So the men said, will you not come with us? The Prophet ﷺ looked at them and said, come back tomorrow. So they went, they rested, and they came back the next day. And they thought that the Prophet ﷺ wanted this time to get himself ready. It's not easy traveling that distance and that journey. So they came back and they asked him straight away, are you ready? So the Prophet ﷺ looked at them and said, Kisra is no longer the king of kings, because verily his son has killed him in cold blood. So the two men looked at him in shock. How can this be? What is this man saying to me? So he said to the two men, go back to Badan, go back to Yemen, and wait. And when you hear the news, then let me know what you want to do. You want to come and take me to Kisra again? Or what is it that you have decided? So they go back to Badan, and they realize that there is no way to get the Prophet ﷺ to go with them to Persia. So they go back to Badan and they tell him what happened. The Prophet ﷺ said to us this. So Badan, shocked, but level-headed, says to his men, let us see what happens. If what he says is true, then verily he is a prophet of Allah, and verily he is a messenger. And if what he says is not true, then we'll take care of it. So a few days pass, and Shirawayh, which is the son of Kisra of that time, sends a letter to Badan telling him what he had done and that he is now the king of kings and he has to take an oath of allegiance to follow him. So when Badan read this letter, he said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. He entered into Islam, and those around him entered into Islam. That was the first encounter of Abdullah ibn Hudhafah with one of the kings of his time. Just a small letter, a tiny ripple in the water, was enough to change the geopolitical reality of the Arabian subcontinent, or the peninsula. Now the second king that Abdullah ibn Hudhafah met was Qaysar, who was the Roman king at the time. Now we all know that there was a war going on between the Muslims and the Romans, and this was in the time of Umar ibn Khattab. This was after the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So in the time of Umar ibn Khattab, Qaysar now is the king of the time. Now, during these wars, the Muslims would fight against, obviously, the Nasara, the Christians, and against the Romans, and there would obviously be prisoners of war. And it just so happened that Abdullah ibn Hudhafah was one of those prisoners of war during one of the battles that took place between the Romans and the Muslims. While he was a prisoner of war, the Qaysar, he obviously knew about the Muslims, and he heard about their chivalry, and he heard about their courage, and he heard about their abilities in battle. So he wanted to find out the secret. What drives these people? What drives these men? What makes them the way they are? So he wanted to speak to their leader, and their leader just so happened to be Abdullah ibn Hudhafah. So they sat down with him. And he asked him a set of questions, to which Abdullah ibn Hudhafah was not privy to answer. So Qaysar started to invite him to al-Nasraniyah. He started to invite him to Christianity. He said, enter into the fold of Christianity. And Abdullah ibn Hudhafah said, no. Qaysar said, if you enter into Christianity, I will set you free, and I will be generous to you, and I will give you whatever you want. So Abdullah ibn Hudhafah said to him, I would rather die. Death is more beloved to me than leaving the deen of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Qaysar says, he ups the ante a bit. Says to him, if you enter into Nasraniyah, if you enter into Christianity, I will give you a portion of my wealth, and I will halve whatever I own and whatever I have dominion over with you. So Abdullah ibn Hudhafah smiled and said no. So he said, if you enter into Christianity, or if you do not enter into Christianity, I will kill you. So Abdullah ibn Hudhafah said, whatever, do what you need to do. So Qaysar is at a loss, doesn't know what to do with his man. So he ties him up onto a plank of wood and starts to throw knives at him. He gets a man, a nas, and he throws knives. He says to him, aim at his arms. And every time he throws a knife, he says, enter into Nasraniyah. And every time a knife is thrown, Abdullah ibn Hudhafah says, no. He throws it at his legs. Enter into Nasraniyah. Abdullah ibn Hudhafah says, no. He throws it at his head. Just misses his ear. Enter into Nasraniyah. Abdullah ibn Hudhafah says, no. So Qaysar at this point is angry. So the next step he takes is he gets a pot of boiling oil. He brings the companions of Abdullah ibn Hudhafah, and one by one he throws them into this boiling pot of oil. And so they instantly die, and their skin melts off of their bones to the point where their bones are even charred. And after every person that is thrown into this pot of oil, Qaysar requests, asks, orders him to embrace Christianity. And despite seeing this, and despite knowing that if he was to say yes and enter into Christianity, his friends, his companions, will not be thrown into this pot. But every single time it happens, Abdullah ibn Hudhafah says no. So one companion gets thrown in. Enter into Christianity. No. Another one. Enter into Christianity. No. To the point where Qaysar is now at his wit's end. He has no more solutions for this man, and he believes that he will never enter into Christianity. So he says, okay, fine. Throw Abdullah, throw him into the oil, and let us be rid of him. Let's finish it. Give me some closure. So he walks away, and as he's walking away and they're getting ready to throw Abdullah ibn Hudhafah into this pot of oil, Abdullah ibn Hudhafah breaks down crying. When Qaysar, while he's walking away, he hears him from behind, crying. He's cracked. I've got him. He turns around, runs back, says to him, enter into Nasraniyah, thinking that he's got him at a weak spot now. Abdullah ibn Hudhafah looks at him, tears in his eyes, and says, no. La ilaha illallah. Qaysar's thinking, what made you cry? Why are you crying? So Abdullah ibn Hudhafah said, I wished that I had, by the number of hairs on my body, souls in which I can be killed that many times, thrown into this pot that many times, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Deep. So Qaysar is absolutely shocked, and he realizes the secret now. He realizes that these guys are attached to a higher power. These guys have a secret that I will never ever achieve, and my soldiers will never ever have that. And there is no way that this man can crack. There is no way that this man can ever enter into Christianity. There is no way that this man can ever leave the deen of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he says to him finally, okay, what have you if you kiss my forehead and I will allow you and your companions to go free? So Abdullah ibn Hudhafah looks at him, thinks for a second. I kissed the head of this tyrant, this evil man, but I go free and my companions also go free. No harm in that. So he stands, kisses the forehead of Qaysar and leaves. And his companions leave with him. When he gets back to Medina, he tells Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu what happened. And Umar ibn Khattab is so shocked. And he says to him and to his companions around him, حَقٌّ عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ أَن يُقَبِّلَ رَأْسَ عَبْدُ اللَّهِ ibn Hudhafah. That it is a right on every Muslim to kiss the forehead of Abdullah ibn Hudhafah, and I will be the first one to start. So he stood and he kissed the forehead of Abdullah ibn Hudhafah. Radiyallahu anhum ajma'een. Wa jazakumullahu khaira for listening. Assalamu alaikum.